Nothing says Christmas quite like roasted chestnuts. It's a nostalgic holiday tradition we've seen countless times on screen.
Every time I eat them, it's like my whole childhood flashes before my eyes.
And of course, in song.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
But most people have never actually eaten a roasted chestnut. And there's a dark history behind your favorite Christmas carol that explains why. The Christmas song was written on a swelteringly hot day in 1945 by this guy, Mel the Velvet Fog Torme. As legend has it, Torme and co-writer Bob Wells were trying to cool themselves down by thinking cold, cold winter thoughts. The King Cole Trio recorded the song, and a Christmas classic was born. At the very same moment in time, the American chestnut tree was being decimated by an invisible pathogen, the chestnut blight.
In the States, it killed roughly 4 billion to 5 billion trees in a matter of 30 years. Here in southern Ontario, we estimate between 1.5 and 2 million trees were exterminated. My name's Ron Kassir, and I'm chair for the Canadian Chestnut Council. So what you're looking at here are 2,000 research trees on a 1-acre plot on my farm in central Elgin, just a little bit north of Port Stanley off of Lake Erie. We're testing here their resistance to the blight. It's like any invasive that has entered the emerald ash borer, Dutch elm disease, all accidentally introduced here. We try to keep them out because our trees here just don't have the immunity.
To really understand the chestnut blight, you need to know about the past. The American chestnut was called the king of the forest, the redwood of the East. For 20 million years, it reigned over eastern North America, from Georgia all the way up into Ontario in the Canadian Carolinian zone. Here, 1 in every 4 hardwoods would have been an American chestnut.
Be a spectacular tree. They were a super canopy tree, would grow to 35 meters in height, so they would stick well above the canopy of the rest of the forest. And at the base, the tree could be anywhere from 2.5 to 3 meters in diameter. It was used for everything, and it became known as the cradle to grave tree. So your cradle, every piece of furniture you'd use in your life would be made of chestnut. And finally, your coffin would also be made of chestnut. Approximately the year 1876, an American entrepreneur opened the first mail-order tree nursery in New Jersey, and he imported 12 Chinese chestnuts from Japan and sold them to wealthy clientele on the eastern seaboard of the United States. And from those 12 infected trees, the blight was spread along the entire eastern seaboard, approximately 50 miles a year.
By the 1950s, the blight had spread to billions of trees in every corner of the American chestnut's natural range. The war was over. The tree was declared functionally extinct. It's hard to calculate the magnitude of this loss, but you can find the importance of the American chestnut tree reflected in the pop culture of the time. There's a reason why there's a chestnut street in nearly every town in Canada and the United States. There were songs written about chestnuts. It was even used as a verb, to go chestnutting. The American chestnut tree is special because it produced nuts every single year, unlike many other nut trees. That meant 20 million pounds of chestnuts. That's a lot of food.
Permaculturalists call it the corn on a tree. So it has about the same nutritional value as corn and rice. People that lived in this county back in the 20s who actually harvested chestnuts, and it paid for their university degree at Western here. We know of people that paid their taxes in chestnuts. 275 species depended on the chestnut as a constant food supply. Deer, black bear, raccoons, rabbits, squirrels, passenger pigeon, ruffed grouse, wild turkey. Chestnut was what we call a keystone species. With its demise, all these populations collapsed.
So what about the future of the American chestnut tree, you ask? Well, right now, the Canadian Chestnut Council is working with the University of Guelph to engineer a blight-resistant chestnut. And their end goal is to one day replant these stronger chestnut trees in the wild, bringing the old giant back to Canadian forests.
Which way? Okay. Notice the ones with the tags on are the ones that have been deliberately inoculated with 2 different strains of the blight. So the blight is a fungus, a fungal disease that reproduces with spores. The spores enter the tree through a wound, and slowly the fungus spreads around the tree, girdling it, and the tree is effectively dead within a year. Now the ones that show the best resistance, they are then entered into our breeding program where we cross them with our other best trees that show resistance, and we get another generation. This year we planted 250 of our 3rd generation back crosses. So we're trying to maintain our Canadian American chestnut.
There are survivors out in the wild. Every year, a few more American chestnut trees are discovered. And that's mainly because the tree has one secret weapon. The blight never kills the root collar. So if a tree can regenerate and send up new branches fast enough, it can survive. With only a few thousand chestnuts left in the wild, every new tree is significant. And often, these discoveries are made by regular people, just out for a walk.
So I'm Kara Souls. I live out in Portland, Oregon, and my family's from Vermont. I spent a chunk of time there this year as well, also in isolation, obviously. My dog, she has just broken away from me and is booking it through the woods after a chipmunk. And as I run along, I look down and there's this spiky ball about this big, and my heart stops. And I go, I know what that is. I know what that is. But I can't give up on my dog, so I grab it and I stick it in my pocket and I keep running. So I crack it open and I look inside and there's these perfect little nuts in there. They're fuzzy, they're soft, like the whole inside is like velvet. So we broke out the books, we broke out the websites. I went back, found the tree, measured the tree, all of that kind of stuff. And it lined up every step of the way. As it checked out, I started sobbing. I was really embarrassed. I was just like, oh, it's American chestnut. Like, what? I had dreamt of this for years. I mean, this is a staple tree of my area that I have not witnessed. And it wasn't until I emailed someone from the American Chestnut Association, and they helped me talk through some of it, that the chance actually became very, very good, that it was an American chestnut.
The story of the American chestnut is a forgotten tragedy, but it's also a lesson in hope. If the efforts of people like Kara and Ron are successful, then one day, the American chestnut tree might be restored to its former glory in North American forests. One holiday season soon, you might find yourself together with friends and family, bringing a very old tradition back to life, chestnutting in the woods nearby.